Welcome back to Monitors Unboxed. It's time to update our OLED monitor recommendation guide for the end of 2025. There have been tons of new OLED releases throughout the year and some pretty aggressive price changes as well. So this is a substantial update that brings a range of new suggestions for people after an OLED display. 2025 has been a difficult year for monitor recommendations because there's been a lot more price volatility. I'm going to try to do my best to navigate this situation and still make this guide useful for people in North America and other regions around the world. As usual, there will be many monitors recommended in this video, so hopefully when it comes time to hit the buy button, at least one of these options will be appealing. We have links in the description below to check current pricing and purchase these monitors if you're interested. As with our previous best of videos, I tend to talk about and recommend monitors we've personally tested and know to be good, or monitors that are very similar to products I have tested. It's always worth going back and checking out the dedicated monitor reviews we produce for more in-depth thoughts on each product, but these recommendations are not sponsored in any way by any manufacturer. They're based on our testing and reviews. But before I get to my top picks, a quick word from the non-monitor sponsor of our best monitor series.
Today's video is brought to you by Insta360 and their new Link 2 4K webcam, now available in white. This unit features a high-performance half-inch sensor delivering crisp 4K video with an AI-powered audio algorithm, providing great audio quality via the built-in microphone. Building on the original Link, the Link 2 also has, you guessed it, AI tracking for individuals and groups, as well as gesture control and auto framing. It now also offers modes such as customizable backgrounds and effects, so if you, like me, are sick of the Harbour & Box studio, you can dip down to your local coffee shop and just hang out and relax. The 4K 30fps camera offers excellent video quality even in low light situations, such as this. Nice and dark now. I think I look pretty good on the screen, still nice and clear. So really, for a cost-effective solution, the image quality is amazing and can probably really only be bested by something like a professional digital SLR. The Link 2 is also equipped with a gimbal, making it perfect for demos and presentations. Balin, get out of my presentation. It also pairs perfectly with the new Wave speakerphone. Black Friday sales are now live, so check the link in the video description and make sure to use our code for $50 off the entire Link 2 range.
One of the best monitor formats on the market overall right now is 32-inch 4K 240Hz OLED. These panels are large, high resolution, fast, and produce excellent HDR for gaming. With two main panel types to choose from, QD-OLED and WOLED, there are lots of great options and it's rare to find one that's outright bad. Since the release of 4K OLED screens, there has been a battle for the best panel type between QD-OLED and WOLED. As we're now coming towards the end of 2025, based on current monitors, I think this battle is largely over. The best 32-inch 4K monitors right now use WOLED panels, and the best value use QD-OLED, so it really depends which way you want to go. The overall best 32-inch 4K OLED monitor in my opinion is the Asus ROG Strix XG32UC WMG. This is a 32-inch 4K WOLED with a 240Hz refresh rate, and the reason why I think this is the best is because of its excellent feature set. It provides a stunning glossy true black finish, which is superior to QD-OLED glossy and does a better job of preserving blacks in all usage environments. QD-OLED has a pesky problem of blacks appearing grey in brighter rooms, which is a complete non-issue on the WOLED-based UC-WMG. There are two other advantages to WOLED over QD-OLED. One is better HDR performance thanks to more consistent brightness output with no panel dimming in bright scenes and peak brightness that still reaches 1000 nits. 4K 240Hz WOLED also offers dual mode support, allowing the monitor to run in a 1080p 480Hz configuration. This mode is super clear for competitive gaming and adds to the versatility of the product for those that play multiple types of game. Asus throw in some great features like their Neo proximity sensor, OLED anti-flicker mode, ELMB, and unlocked color controls. Now QD-OLED does have some advantages, including a wider color volume and higher color brightness, along with better uniformity. But I think the overall package that the latest glossy WOLED panels offer is the best on the market. The one potential holdup here for buyers will be the price. I was originally told the XG32UC WMG should cost $950 US as a global MSRP, but with tariffs it's actually being sold for $1,100 US, which is pricey. The cheapest 240Hz QD OLEDs start at about $850 to $900, so this premium WOLED offering is 30% more expensive, and we're seeing a similar margin in Australia. It's a great product, but whether you want to spend 30% more to get a best of the best monitor is up to you. It's not an outrageous difference, especially at the high end of the market, but it's not a value choice, that's for sure. The best value 32-inch 4K OLEDs are the current crop of 240Hz QD OLEDs, which as I said start around $850 to $900 for monitors like the Gigabyte FO32U2, MSI MPG 321URX and 321UPX, as well as several others. If your priority is a 32-inch OLED screen and want the best bang for buck, this is the way I'd go. The great news about buying a QD OLED instead of a WOLED is that most of the performance characteristics are the same. At 4K 240Hz, you still get lightning fast response times and superb motion clarity, only missing out on the 1080p 480Hz mode, which is not available here. You also still get amazing HDR image quality thanks to per pixel control, deep blacks, and bright highlights. While QD OLED doesn't handle bright scenes as well as WOLED in my opinion, the HDR gaming experience QD OLED offers is great, and overall brightness is pretty good, especially in darker scenes with small bright elements. There are screen coating concerns with QD OLED, though despite worse handling of ambient light, QD OLED Glossy does a better job at preventing reflections than WOLED Glossy. Text quality is pretty similar on both panel types, and most QD OLEDs I've tested come with great factory calibration. Because QD OLED panels are more widespread than glossy WOLED, there are far more options to choose from, and pricing is more competitive as a result. I've tested a ton of these QD OLEDs, and I haven't found one that is impossible to recommend. Of course, there are small feature and design differences between each model, but there isn't really a bad option that performs notably worse than the others. Brightness, for example, is pretty much identical across all 32-inch 4K QD OLEDs, and most offer the same sorts of HDR modes. Unless you specifically want a feature like DisplayPort 2.1 or Dolby Vision, neither of which I believe is necessary for gaming right now, you should just buy the cheapest model that satisfies your requirements. Some candidates that we've tested include the MSI 321URX, 321UPX, and 322URX. All of these are great, but the 322URX tends to be more expensive as it includes DisplayPort 2.1. So generally, I'd opt for the 321 models instead. There's the Asus ROG Swift PG32 UCDM, which has a great feature set. There's the curved Dell Alienware AW3225QF. There's the Gigabyte FO32U2P, which also includes DisplayPort 2.1. There's the Samsung Odyssey OLED G81SF, and many other similar models we haven't tested. The thing to keep in mind here is that there's only one 32-inch 4K 240Hz QD OLED panel currently on the market, and all of these variants use that same panel. Another option to consider is going with a 165Hz 4K OLED instead, which can often shave a bit off the price. This refresh rate variant exists for both QD OLED and WOLED. Asus, for example, offer the XG32UC-WG, which is exactly the same glossy WOLED as the UC-WMG, but cut back to 165Hz instead. You'll find similar models on the QD OLED side, like the MSI 321UP. Generally, you can save $100 to $150 US, opting for the lower refresh rate, which isn't a huge saving, but is something to consider if you want the lowest cost monitor with this type of panel. There's no change to our 27-inch 4K OLED gaming monitor recommendations since our guide earlier in the year. If you aren't interested in a 32-inch OLED due to its size, a 27-inch option might be right for you, and in general today's 27-inch 4K QD OLEDs perform very similarly to their 32-inch counterparts. Essentially, they're a shrunk-down version with a higher pixel density. I've tested 5 of these displays in 2025, and all of them are great products that are worth buying if the price is appropriate in your region. These are the Asus ROG Strix PG27UCDM and ROG Strix XG27UCDMG, the MSI MPG 272URX, the Dell Alienware AW2725Q, and the Gigabyte MO27U2. Like with the 32-inch models, the general performance on offer with each monitor is very similar, so the deciding factor comes down to price and features. In most regions right now, I would recommend the Dell Alienware AW2725Q as my first choice due to its unbeatable price. This is regularly the cheapest 27-inch 4K QD OLED, and with performance very similar to other options, there is little reason to spend more on something else. It's just as bright as other models, it looks excellent for HDR gaming, it uses a glossy panel with deep blacks, and the only real downside is it lacks some of the features found on premium models, like USB-C display signal input. The AW2725Q is typically in a good position because it has an MSRP of $900 US, which at baseline is cheaper than most competitors. But these days, it can regularly be found on sale for $800 or even as low as $700 US. This makes it much cheaper than the next best option, the Asus ROG Strix XG27 UCD-MG, which is a $980 monitor that rarely dips below $900. The Asus model has some additional features that are worth considering, like the near proximity sensor, KVM switch, and unlocked sRGB mode, but it's impossible to justify spending 20 to 35% more compared to the Dell variant. Here in Australia, for example, the Asus model is 30% more expensive than the Dell, and isn't even Asus's most expensive model. If you want the best of the best Asus ROG Swift PG27 UCDM, which adds in features like DisplayPort 2.1 and Dolby Vision, you'll have to spend over 50% more. So the AW2725Q is in a fantastic value position that makes it easy to recommend. The other options like the MSI 272URX, Gigabyte MO27U2, and even the Samsung OLED G81 SF variant that I haven't tested are all fine and might be suitable choices in your region if they are especially good value, but none of them are standouts in terms of features, so it's hard to justify spending a premium compared to the AW2725Q. Some of these options are far too expensive in my opinion. The 272URX, for example, is $1,000 US, yet it has a worse feature set than the Alienware model, but if for whatever reason it was price competitive with the AW2725Q, it would definitely be worth considering. If you're after a 1440p OLED gaming monitor, there are more options than ever and pricing competition is fierce. Like with the 4K category, there are two main panel variants, QD-OLED and WOLED, each offering different strengths and weaknesses. In previous guides, I've tended to recommend QD-OLED because I felt that panel type has offered the best mix of performance and value. But with new 4th gen primary RGB tandem WOLED panels hitting the market towards the end of 2025, I'm changing this recommendation and focusing now on WOLED, as I think the updated panels are the best for 1440p gaming. 4th gen WOLED has several qualities that make it superior to today's QD-OLEDs. The key quality is brightness. The latest WOLED panels are noticeably brighter in both SDR and HDR content. In SDR, this is the brightest panel type you can get, pushing up to 330 nits versus 250 nits for 1440p QD-OLED. In HDR, we also see over 300 nits in bright scenes and up to 1400 nits peak, with some real-world results exceeding QD-OLED peak performance. It does all of this without any of the frustrating panel dimming you get with QD-OLED in bright scenes, which means you get a more consistent brightness experience across a wide range of HDR content. WOLED's layer structure also does a superior job of handling ambient light. One of the main issues with QD-OLED is how it reflects light in brighter rooms, raising blacks and making the screen look grey. This hurts one of the key selling points to OLED, which is its deep blacks. This isn't anywhere near as much of a concern with WOLED, so this panel type tends to look blacker and higher contrast. There's not a huge difference between WOLED and QD-OLED in dark rooms, but if you use your display during the day or under artificial lights, WOLED takes the crown. The 4th gen WOLED panel also brings with it several key improvements over previous WOLED 1440p panels, including an updated subpixel structure for better text rendering and a wider color gamut. These changes eliminated some of the gaps between WOLED and QD-OLED that were present with previous comparisons. My primary recommendation in this category is the Asus ROG Strix XG27 AQ-WMG. It's a 27-inch 1440p 280Hz monitor that uses a 4th gen WOLED panel. This is the best option in my opinion due to its excellent true black glossy coating, which preserves black levels and has fantastic clarity with no grain. If you want the most vibrant experience with colors that pop, glossy WOLED is the way to go, but just be aware that reflections can be an issue in some circumstances. Asus have also done a great job in terms of overall performance and features. Motion performance is of course very good at 280Hz on an OLED, and Asus offer fantastic factory calibration with tons of adjustable settings in the SDR and HDR modes to customize it to your liking. We also get the latest Asus extras like ELMB black frame insertion, the anti-flicker modes, and the Neo proximity sensor, all of which are useful additions. The XG27 AQ-WMG will be available shortly, within the next month in most regions, at a price point of $600 US, which is extremely competitive given its excellent performance. But another option to consider might be the Gigabyte MO27Q28G, which uses the same panel and is $50 cheaper at $550. The main difference between the Asus and Gigabyte models is the Gigabyte uses a matte coating, which is better at eliminating reflections. But overall, I prefer the Asus glossy coating, so I'd rather spend the extra $50 to get it. Outside of that, the two monitors offer very similar performance and feature sets, so it's hard to go wrong. Like with the Asus model, the MO27Q28G is expected to be broadly available within the next month or so, and it's started to roll out in some regions right now. If it's not available for you just yet, I'd check in with your retailers regularly. With both of these models set to occupy the $550 to $600 price range, it's difficult to recommend a QD OLED at their typical price. The going rate for a 1440p, 240 or 280Hz QD OLED is between $500 and $600. So, in the best cases, you'll save a small amount of money going QD OLED, and worst cases, these options are a similar price or more expensive. The primary RGB tandem WOLED panels I've just been talking about are better, and at say $500 versus $550, I'd recommend spending just 10% more to get the WOLED screen. But there is a point at which QD OLED options come back into contention. Here in Australia, for example, the MO27Q28G is $900 Aussie, matching the US price after currency conversion. But you can get a Dell Alienware AW2725D, a 27-inch 1440p 280Hz QD OLED, for just $700. That's a 22% saving compared to the Gigabyte, and at that sort of price, I'd definitely consider QD OLED. The AW2725D is a great product with lots of strengths. It's a monitor I recommend, and I think about a 20% difference is fair between this and 4th Gen WOLED. Depending on what I wanted and how much I wanted to spend on a premium product, I could go either way. The AW2725D is the QD OLED that you should consider first because it's often the best value across the regions I looked at, though in the US it's not especially amazing at $500 US. Some other options worth considering are the MSI MAG271QPX24 and 273QPX24, along with the Gigabyte MO27Q2. All three of these are 240Hz monitors compared to the Dell at 280Hz. At a similar price to 4th Gen WOLED, you can also get a higher refresh rate QD OLED, something 360Hz, like the Dell Alienware AW2725DF, Gigabyte Aorus FO27Q3, or MSI MPG271QRX. 360Hz isn't a massive improvement over 280Hz, but it is slightly clearer and has lower input latency, so it could be the better choice for competitive gamers. Just make sure to assess pricing in your region because this is a super competitive category in 2025, and I wouldn't be surprised to see QD OLED sales dropping some of these products below $500 US. If money is no object and you want the absolute best of the best 1440p gaming monitor, right now this is the Asus ROG Swift PG27AQ-WP-W. This uses the very same sort of 4th gen primary RGB tandem WOLED panel I was talking about just before, but bumped up to a 540Hz refresh rate. This beast does it all, whether you're after the best single-player HDR experience or the fastest motion and lowest input lag for multiplayer gaming. All of the benefits I was discussing about the XG27AQ-WMG also apply to the PG27AQ-WP, including its true black glossy coating and fantastic WOLED panel. But there's another trick up its sleeve, a 720Hz 720p dual mode, increasing clarity even further compared to the standard 540Hz 1440p mode. The resolution here is quite low, just 720p, which is problematic in some games that have small text or UI elements, so for the most part I'd recommend sticking with the 540Hz configuration, but it's an interesting bonus feature that in niche use cases might come in handy. The major downside to the PG27AQ-WP is that it's super expensive, debuting at $1,100 US. That's $500 more or an 83% premium over the Asus 280Hz WOLED for what is otherwise a very similar monitor outside of the refresh rate and the cooler design. If you won't be playing games above 280fps regularly, there's not much point spending that sort of cash on 540Hz. However, it could be justified if you are a highly competitive gamer that wants the best clarity and responsiveness. If the high refresh rate and motion clarity of this monitor is appealing, but you don't want to spend $1,100 US, once again a good way to save money is opting for a QD OLED instead. The latest 500Hz QD OLED monitors start at $750 US, like the MSI MAG272QPX50. At 1440p there is little difference between 500 and 540Hz, so the motion clarity these screens offer is just as excellent at a whopping 30% lower price. The battle between WOLED and QD-OLED is also more competitive at these higher price points because the 500Hz QD-OLED panels are brighter than the 240 to 360Hz variants. 500Hz QD-OLED exceeds 300 nits in SDR content, and some HDR scenes are brighter as well, though panel dimming is not solved. The 540Hz WOLED panel is still better in my opinion, but in the flagship category the performance gap between WOLED and QD-OLED is smaller and the price gap is wider, so there's a lot more reason to consider a 500Hz QD-OLED here. If you want an ultra-wide OLED gaming monitor, there are a range of great options on the market today, with panel vendors providing a multitude of formats. There's a couple of standout options though, depending on the sort of ultra-wide that you're after, and my recommendations here are unchanged compared to earlier in the year. The best ultra-wide on the market is the LG 45GX950A. It has a massive 45-inch 5120x2160 WOLED panel running at 165Hz, providing a level of quality and immersion that has only been possible since this panel debuted earlier this year. It dominates your field of view at a normal desk viewing distance and is amazing for single-player gaming and simulator setups. Plus, with a higher resolution than previous 45-inch OLED ultrawides, it no longer has an inadequate pixel density and poor text quality for desktop use. The 45GX950A has a bunch of other strengths to go along with its size and resolution. This is a great HDR monitor offering strong levels of brightness, fantastic ambient light handling, and no panel dimming concerns. It also supports dual mode, with its 2560x1080 configuration increasing the refresh rate to 330Hz for a clarity boost in multiplayer titles. However, there are some weaker aspects to this monitor. The 800R curve is a bit too curved for my liking, though LG is set to release an adjustable curve version at some point. The HDR modes are decent, but need some additional tweaking. Probably the biggest issue is the price tag. This monitor debuted at $2,000 US, and while it's since fallen to a little under $1,500, it's still one of the most expensive OLEDs on the market. It's a decent monitor in my opinion, and the best ultra-wide format, but that sort of price will restrict it to the highest end buyers. A more normal ultra-wide format that won't cost you anywhere near $1,500 is 34-inch 3440x1440, and in 2025 the options in this space are better than ever. I would recommend the Dell Alienware AW3425DW, a new and refreshed version of the AW3423DWF that we've been recommending for years, bumping the refresh rate up to 240Hz at an attractive $800 US price point. This monitor uses a QD-OLED panel which is largely unchanged from the original 34-inch QD-OLED ultrawides we saw years ago, outside of the higher 240Hz refresh rate we're getting now. While this does mean it lacks some of the newer capabilities of the 4K panels, Dell have continued to optimize this panel really well in their AW34 series. It has great accuracy, excellent tuning, and it delivers the fast HDR gaming experience we've come to love over the years. I typically recommend this Alienware model because of its great price point, solid feature set, and excellent performance. While its normal price is $800 US, it's regularly on sale for $720, so it could be worth waiting for a discount. There are other 34-inch QD-OLED ultrawides on the market, but a lot of them are way too expensive, and others just lack the polish the Dell model provides. The older AW3423DWF is also a great choice still if you can find it cheaper than the new 25DW variant. I've seen it for below $600 US at times, but for most people, I think the AW3425DW will be the way to go. Lastly, if you want an even wider panel, there are 49-inch 5120x2160 QD-OLED panels available at up to 240Hz, providing a 32:9 aspect ratio, which is the equivalent of two 27-inch 1440p panels stitched together side by side. It's a very immersive format if you have the desk space to accommodate it, ideal for things like racing and flight simulators. My lukewarm recommendation in this category remains one of the Samsung Odyssey OLED G9 models, such as the G95SC or the G93SD, at around $1,000. The higher-end G95SC is the model I tested, and it comes with full Smart TV functionality. If you don't want that functionality and are fine with a more basic OSD and feature set, the G93SD should be the same monitor without those features. $1,000 is a very reasonable price for these type of monitor these days, given how expensive they were to begin with. So that's it for this OLED gaming monitor recommendation video. A lot of excitement in the monitor market at the moment has been for OLED gaming monitors, and there has never been more options to choose from. While a lot of the main panel formats are now available, both LG Display and Samsung Display are continuing to evolve their offerings, and we're expecting plenty more good stuff to be released in 2026. As always, if you want to learn more about the monitors I've been talking about in this video, I have individual reviews available right here on Monitors Unboxed. I'd also recommend checking the links in the description for updated pricing information, as this does change over time, so check down there if you are watching this video weeks or months after it went live. We also appreciate anyone that uses those links to buy one of the monitors we've recommended in this video if you found it helpful. So yeah, that's it for this one. As always, a ton of testing and review work goes into these monitor recommendation videos. So if you do want to support our independent testing and analysis right here at Monitors Unboxed, then consider signing up to our Patreon page. Links to that is in the description below. You do get a couple of cool monitor related perks if you sign up, such as access to our monitor database, which has our recommended settings and ICC profiles for the monitors we test. We also have a Discord chat, which has a dedicated monitors channel. Great place to get recommendations and chat about monitors. I'm in there talking with you sometimes. If you're a little stuck on what sort of product that you want, you're not quite sure what to go with, some people in the monitors channel will hopefully help you out. So yeah, check out that. Anyway, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.